It only gets
All right. Well,
uh,
welcome everyone to our impromptu alumni speaker. I am taking over for Sergio. He had a travel obligation that he was unable to get out of, so we thought this was a great opportunity to share a little bit about virtual etiquette regarding Zoom and effective email. As always, please make sure that your background is appropriate. You are welcome to unmute yourself to ask questions, turn your camera on, all those things, and I will cover that in more detail coming up. Um, all right, so we, as I mentioned, we're going to cover attending Zoom sessions, and then we can take a break and ask questions if we want, or we can jump right into effective email communication, and then there'll be time for more questions at the end. So starting off with attending Zoom sessions, and I'm sure this is what some of us do look like right now. It's okay, we're here. Everyone has their camera on, it's an appropriate background. We're here, right? So first rule of appropriate Zoom conduct is to be on time. So make sure that you are there and ready to go at least 5 minutes beforehand. Make sure that you set a timer, an appointment if it's necessary. Have an alarm go off, right? Have a reminder in your calendar go off. It is just like as you were at in-person meeting, so plan appropriately. I am going to have to show up to class at 5:30. Doesn't matter if it is virtual or if it's in person. I'm ready to go 10, 15 minutes beforehand. I have my drink, I have my books, all of that stuff, and then you're ready to go when the teacher's ready to go. So second rule, I know that this can be hard for some people, myself included. No eating, right? Especially if your camera is on, your sound will carry, right? And then it's not great. The sounds that come out of you when you're eating sometimes, it's distracting. Um, and for the most part, it's, short. Meetings are short, classes are short. If you need a drink, have a drink. Not a big deal, right? But make sure that you are not like sitting there eating spaghetti and like, yeah, I'm eating something. Or like that your mug could potentially be slightly inappropriate. Maybe you don't want to
Yeah.
have that on camera, right? Make sure that it is appropriate for the setting. Ernie's used to my skull mug, it doesn't matter. Third rule is to turn your camera on if you have the ability to, right? When you turn your camera on, be engaged and ready to show your face. I'm here. I am dressed appropriately for the first time in a while. I am ready to participate and engage and show who is presenting, that give them feedback, because presenting on Zoom, being in a Zoom class, those can be hard, especially if there's a bunch of blank screens. And then make sure that your background is clear of distractions, right? You don't have people coming in and out, walking through. There's so many different Zoom backgrounds right now. A blur effect is really easy to do that, and that way it's helpful for the presenter and for other people in your meeting or your class, right? And there's like, this guy has a great one. He's in the president's office, right? Again, make sure the Zoom background is appropriate for the situation. Rule 4 is to sit still. So by sit still, it doesn't mean like, you can't scratch your face or get your drink. It means don't like jump around or like move your camera. Molly will demonstrate. Shake your camera all around. It's super distracting. It can make other people nauseous. Like your eye keeps going to it. It pulls away from who's speaking and who's presenting, right? If you need to move, super easy, right? Turn your camera off. There it is. I move, I come back, I turn my camera back on. Really, really easy, right? It's a lot easier and less distracting to do that than it is to just get up and be moving around, petting the dog, doing all that stuff. So appropriate backgrounds. Rule 5, speak up, right? So specifically for classes, like engage with your instructor, talk to them. Ernie loves it when you talk to him. And it just adds to conversation. You're there to have a conversation. You're there to have a discussion. So if you can't speak up, when you're in class or you're in a meeting, then what's the point of being there, right? If you can't engage appropriately. And then it's just great to have feedback that way, as opposed to trying to monitor the chat all the time. It's a lot easier to unmute yourself, say your question, and then there's no ambiguous, trying to read and say it out loud, none of that stuff. It's much easier. All right, so rule 6, don't multitask. Now, I am very guilty of this one. But you want to make sure that you're giving your full attention to whatever it is that you're doing, right? If it is class, you're paying for class. You are paying to be in that class. So if you don't want to devote the time to it, I guess that's you, but you're wasting your money. If it's work, they're paying you to be there, right? So, it's super easy to be distracted by email, by the phone, by your watch, right? You can do so many other things, but then you miss really important information. You have to tell someone to go back, cover other things. It's just, again, distracting. It's rude. You would want to pay the respect to someone that you would want in return, right? Rule 7, close the door if applicable, right? So make sure that you have outside distractions limited, and then let others know, like if you're at home, hey, I have class, or hey, I have a meeting, right? Can you guys make sure and keep it down? I've got a background on if you need to walk by, but just please be aware that I don't want to distract others and I want to be polite. And then you could set up a designated work area. One, it makes it easier for doing those things. This is your work area. You can get into work mode, school mode, whatever it is. And then people can kind of know to work around when you're there. This one is a really funny story. I don't know if you guys remember. This is a professor at a university, and he was teaching his class at home, and his son would have different costumes and walk by in class. So a fun, situation and to kind of break up, but not always appropriate. All right, so I covered those really fast. Is there any questions going over any of those things, any situations, scenarios? Feel free to unmute yourself. Go ahead in the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, I can share that. So being in classes and some of them being on Zoom last semester, I remember being on a Zoom class, and one of the students had his camera on, and he decided that he needed to change his shirt, have a full meal, drink something, talk to people off camera. And as a student, it distracted me so much that I actually lost some of what the professor was saying during the presentation. And so it really does, even if you feel like maybe, other people can't see you, they can, or at least act as if they can. So if you feel like you need to be moving around, maybe, turning off the camera for a moment, and do what you need to do and then come back on. But I love what you said about, act as though you are in an in-person class.
Mhm.
Would you be doing all of those things in an in-person class? So hopefully not.
I would hope so. It might be very distracting, but also easier to call someone out on it, right? If it was in person, what are you doing?
Exactly. And I've also been in Zoom classes where someone will forget to mute themselves, and then they have a whole bunch of family stuff going on in the background. And, we all have lives outside of class, of course, but I think just muting yourself if you know that there might be distractions really helps.
Definitely, definitely. Anyone else have any questions, comments? No?
Kirstyn, I think you made a good point.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
The other thing I would say is that if you are a presenter too, to be aware of things like
Okay.
Doris, do you have a question?
I have a question.
Yes, Daniel.
So we talked about, you mentioned calling a person out, right? It's easier in class than on Zoom. I mean, just on Thursday, MBA class, and a guy's sitting back having a big plate of nachos, and I was real close to saying, "Hey, what's for dinner?" Kind of, to clue some people in, because some of this is just basic etiquette, right? And you bring your basic values and etiquette to the class, and there's a dynamic factor there. And so how do you politely get everybody to say, get on track here, let's, if you're gonna have your camera on, let's not have a plate of nachos, or change your shirt. My goodness, that must have been outrageous. I think I'm just looking for some tact there, because, I can open up my big mouth sometimes, and maybe that's what it takes. But, and the other thing is sometimes I'm in classes where I'm the only camera on. Because I don't want the professor being there all by themselves, on camera, I just feel bad for them. And I wish more other students thought that too.
Well, I think it's if you have your camera on, hopefully that sets the tone of making other people, right, comfortable to do that in that situation. And I think that so many people have gotten uncomfortable, right? And then there's maybe their background isn't appropriate because they don't have a place that they can close themselves off, and so they're trying to be polite. So I have my headshot, right, as my picture, so at least there's a face there, even though it's a non-moving face, it's a face that you can look at and say, I am a person, I am here, I am not Kirstyn Hansen.
And I totally understand that, and I notice in the IST classes that happens a lot more than in the more core classes in the MBA program, because of the type of students, I think. But I think the main thing is, how do we get our fellow classmates to join Zoom etiquette and be involved in and recognize, that their behavior is not appropriate.
You can send a PM, like a DM, like a private message to them, like, hey, that's really distracting to me. Could you turn your camera on, or, mute out your background or something? I'm having a really hard time, paying attention to class. Right. And so you could start there, obviously. If it escalates, you could bring it to the attention of the professor, let them know, and maybe they need to have a conversation with the student. For me, when I'm hosting things like this, I, usually am a facilitator of these meetings. And so I try and be extremely aware of people that perhaps, if they come into the meeting late, they forget that they're, unmuted, right? And so I try and get them really muted really quick. Or if there have been situations where I have turned people's cameras off because it was inappropriate. And then sometimes they turn them back on, and then I turn them off again. And then if it escalates, I will send them a message and be like, hey, I turned your camera off for a reason. Please leave it off, or you're welcome to leave. And then if they don't respond, I kick them out. Because, you're not going to let the masses suffer for one student. Now, that is me as an individual in meetings that I'm hosting and running, right? And so it's, up to the faculty member how they choose to run their course. But if you bring it to it, maybe they're not aware, right? Because they're just looking at their presentation. Like my screen right now, I have presentation on one side and my next slide is coming up and moving over. And so they may not be aware that that is distracting in the background. And so letting the faculty member know, hey, if it's not appropriate, turn your camera off. But you know what? I think we all need to be there and engage with each other. So it kind of depends on the situation, but just having an open dialogue can be a really great way to kind of overcome some of those issues and factors.
Yeah.
I know Ernie just refuses to do Zoom classes anymore. Or if he does, he makes you turn your camera on. He wants to see your face, right? It makes you have more of a relationship, because then that's been lacking. And so we're trying to bring all that back. And that's the whole point of a lot of these things, is to bring that human connection back to whatever we're doing. And it makes it so much more impactful when we do that. Okay, so any more questions or comments about Zoom etiquette? Or did I miss anything, Ernie? Did I cover it all? Did I get it?
I think you've done an excellent job. By this stage, we all should be much better at Zoom than some of us are. To address the camera on, camera off thing, I'm hearing more from fellow faculty that they are encouraging students to put cameras on and then deducting points when the cameras are not. Say 5 participation points are lost if you don't turn your camera on. that type of a thing. Apparently you can't force students to turn their cameras on. Again, I'll give you an example. I was in a Toastmasters meeting. It was a Zoom meeting for entrepreneur Toastmasters. Everybody was lit up. Everybody was discreet with etiquette and the way they spoke. It was amazing. I've never been in a Zoom like this before, where the people actually did everything you're talking about. It was really a joy to be in there and watch people behave in a professional fashion. And these aren't students, these are entrepreneurs who are out there working, right? So I have seen it, I've witnessed it one time, and it wasn't here. So darn it.
Well, hopefully they'll see this and take it to heart, right? That's the goal. Okay, so thank you, Ernie. Always insightful, and I love having you as my boss and helping me out with all these things. We're going to move on to effective emails, which is something that is going to be very helpful for us. Very helpful for you. It is a super important skill that you need to have to be taken seriously as a professional in whatever you're doing, or just seriously, period. Right? So oops, my presentation. There we go. So first off, we want to make sure that you have a clear and direct subject line. It doesn't need to be tune in tonight for blah, 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 because we're going to watch 9 p.m. Central. If it's super long, people are going to stop reading. You want it short and effective. Examples here, meeting date change, right? So, I see, that's important. I need to get to that. I need to make sure that my calendar is clear for that. Quick question about your presentation. Enrollment help required. If it's ambiguous, hey there, that's not a subject line anyone's going to pay attention to. It could get flagged as spam, right? You want to make sure that it is a clear and effective subject line. And then have a professional email address, please, right? It's really easy to, I still have my email address from when I was 13 years old. And I will not tell you how long ago that was. But it is something that I just used to sign up for spam for, right? I want to get the discount, or I want to sign up for, El Pollo Loco rewards, or whatever it is, right? And then I have my email that I want to be taken seriously with, and it's my name, Kirstyn Hansen, right? And then it's not like, Queen Bee 27 at yahoo.com, right? There's not that there's anything wrong with the Yahoo email. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's like, if someone's sending me Queen Bee, who is this, right? Why are they talking to me? This is spam. You're not going to pay attention to it. You want to be taken seriously. You want something that is your name, some amalgamation of your name, right? Easy to read. And that someone will know, oh, hey, I see that their name comes through when they're emailing me. All right. So you want to make sure that your email includes a signature block. And I do have an example here on the screen of the last couple things that I have mentioned. So here, question about meeting on 9/3, right? Hi, Joe. Did you need to bring anything to the meeting on Thursday? Clear, concise, easy to read. And then I have a signature block here at the bottom, right? It tells you who I am, who I am sending the email to you. Because sometimes you can get an email from an ID number at coyote.csusb.edu, and it says, I need help. And that's it, right? And Molly and Delore will look at each other and be like, who is this? What is this? Right? We want to make sure that we can assist you efficiently. We also want to make sure that other people are not searching for your information, and that they can see, okay, oh, hey, this is Kirstyn from CSUSB. She's a student engagement coordinator. Oh, maybe I do want to talk to her, right? And then you can have a link to your LinkedIn. Mine now has a link to make an appointment with me. Like, you can have appropriate things in that. Just don't go crazy. Your email block should not be bigger and more in your face than your email, right? You should be able to easily discern what is the important information in your email and what is the email signature. You should not have to search for the information in there. It should not be distracting from the content that you are sending. And then make sure that you use professional salutations. What up, Molly? That's- now,
Hey,
Molly and
what's
I,
up?
Molly and I might send each other emails like that, but we have a relationship, right? I'm not going to send President Morales, what up, Timo? Like, that's not what's going to happen. Hello, greetings, good morning, good day, right? Something, you know, that's a little more appropriate for the situation. And then if you have a more personal relationship, it's, you know, you can do things like that. But remember, it is in writing, it will be there forever. Everyone will be able to refer back to what you have written. So keep that in mind, right? So your emails should include sparingly used exclamation points. I am also guilty of this. I like to have emails. I like to be excited about my writing. Otherwise, they're too serious sometimes. And then be cautious with humor because it is super easy to misinterpret what someone has written, right? Because how you are going to read that email is how you would have written it. So I'm going to read an email how I would write it, but in my own tone, right? You're going to read it in your personal tone. And so you need to be extremely careful that you're not coming across as too harsh, too blunt. Now, there are situations where that kind of information is appropriate and the situation will determine that, right? But be cautious because it's really easy to have that misconstrued and have an issue later on. And then be aware of cultural differences. If you're talking to someone from international or even across the country or Canada, or I don't know, somewhere else, right? How everyone writes and addresses each other is extremely different than we have here, even in California, right? How we talk and address each other. And then proofread your message, please. Make sure you have a spell check on, Grammarly, right? It's important. We will all make mistakes every once in a while. Nobody is perfect. I mean, present company excluded, but we need to make sure that we're aware of those types of things because again, that is out there forever and you want to be taken serious and you want to be taken as a professional in your email communications. And then check who you're sending your email to. Put the email address in there last. Write your message because sometimes you write in anger, right? Sometimes we don't always want to send the message that we write and then we accidentally send it and then we cannot take it back once it is out there. So use the email address last. It is something, it's a very easy to do, especially if you're going to like reply to something, you know, make sure it's replying to the correct email. Always look at that. Or if you're going to forward something, always put the email address in there last. Make sure that you have the correct information that you want to send within the body of that email. All right. And then we want to make sure that we use classic fonts, easy to read, no, you know, Comic Sans and craziness. We want to make sure that our messages are clear and easily understandable, you know, especially if there is someone with difficulties reading some of those things. Sometimes they're using a screen reader. There's all kinds of situations where a clear font in a black or very dark blue font color is necessary for people with accessibility issues, right? And then lastly, this is something that I have to be very aware of in my emails, specifically is the tone, right? So most of the time in my emails, I come across very formal, blunt, but I'm just trying to provide information. So I have to be aware, how is this going to be perceived by someone that is not Kirstyn when I write this email, right? They need to make sure, because this is great. It's just information. This is all I needed. And someone else would be like, why is she so mad at me? I'm not mad at you. I'm just providing information, but they're not going to see that, right? And so just be aware of how that is. It can be effective for any kind of writing that you're doing. What is the tone that is coming across? And if you're curious, if you can't see something, have someone else read it before you send it. It's very easy to do. Hey, Molly, can you read this email before I send it? Because I don't know what I'm doing. So it's very easy to do. Again, yes, Molly.
I have a super quick question.
Mhm.
So what is your take on emojis?
dependent on the relationship and the situation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So again, I mean, it depends on, like, if I'm trying to write a disciplinary email, I'm not going to put like LOL or a winky face in there.
Or even a frowny face.
Or even a frowny face, like, oh, you did really bad, sad face. Like, terrible. That'd be awful. Would be very upsetting. I would not like to get that email. Like, is this a serious email? Is this like, am I really in trouble? Am I not in trouble? Did they really just send me a sad face telling me my performance evaluation sucked? Like, what's going on here? So, again, you need to be aware of the situation, just like in a conversation, right? Be aware of situational cues. What is going on in the situation? What is applicable, right? And again, it's hard. Sometimes we use emojis to lighten things up because we don't know how things are going to be perceived. And so if worse comes to worse, if you don't know or you are concerned about how something is going to come off in writing, maybe pick up the phone, have a conversation, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, once you put it out there in writing and you send that email, you can't take it back. It is there forever. Someone can screenshot it, they can forward it on, there's all kinds of information that is out there and available. So sometimes a phone conversation or even an email saying, hey, can we have a quick chat? Here's my phone number.
Absolutely.
Right? It can nix out a lot of the situational or cultural errors that can occur in writing. And then it can create that one-on-one relationship where you can understand where someone is coming from and maybe their speech patterns is how they're writing it, right?
Absolutely. And also, if you are writing a formal email, do not include emojis. It really does dampen that formality down big time.
It
So
does.
yes. So but I definitely send emojis when I'm sending emails to Miss Kirstyn because we are coworkers and friends.
Yes.
And so those are often informal. So that makes sense. But I would say when in doubt, don't.
Yes. Well, yes, that's when in doubt, don't. Speaking on that forwarding or replying emails, if you're forwarding an email, maybe you want to be aware of what other information is included in your email. So maybe there's a chat conversation that Molly and I had back and forth. But we need to send some pertinent information from one of the recent messages. Delete. Delete things or copy and paste into a new email, right? Because people can scroll really easily and all that information is there. And maybe there is something that they were not supposed to see. Maybe there's some confidential information. Maybe there's just something inappropriate that no one else would understand, right? So be aware of that information that is out there because it can affect your job, it can affect your classes, it can affect your relationships, all of those things. And so it's very important to be aware. And if perchance some issue like this happens, again, phone call them. You know what? I forwarded an email. It was really inappropriate and I'm very sorry. This is not how this was supposed to come across. Da 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 da. And then, hopefully they can see that and understand that we are all human and we do all make mistakes. And then you can move on, right? And then it happened, and then you're more aware moving forward.
Absolutely. Just remember when you forward a message, all of that is effectively coming from you.
Mm-hmm.
It is as though you are saying that information yourself.
Yes.
So
100%.
very important.
Awesome. I did it, Molly. 32 minutes. So lastly, are we all ready for Zoom? We're in our business attire, our business mullet.
Loving the professional mullet look here.
Professional mullets for Zoom. Always. So does anyone have questions? Not specifically about this picture, just about, Zoom or email etiquette, anything like that, situations. Anyone? Nothing? Man,
Covered
stay
it
injured.
all.
I entertained
You did
myself.
great.
So awesome.
Kirstyn, will you send this, are you gonna send the slide deck? Because I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late and I just didn't want to miss your first.
Yeah, I am happy to send it over.
Thank you.
You
Trademark.
got the last
Kirstyn
slide,
Hansen.
Zach. That was the highlight.
That's the
Yeah,
best one.
that one, yeah.
I know.
You can't
Well,
unsee that.
apparently-
Can't unsee that.
You can't see that, Ernie. So,
I'm damn, I'm scarred for life.
It's very effective. You will always remember this presentation.
I'm wondering what the first slide is now that I saw the last slide says.
Oh no, the first, it's super professional.
Okay.
Super professional. Super professional.
Of course.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. If there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and release everyone to class. I know that there is a lot of
You should
class
pitch the
going on.
brunch real quick while you're here.
Oh,